Hello and welcome to Car Dealer Live. My name is James Batchelor. Thank you very much for joining us for these live broadcasts on the Car Dealer Magazine YouTube channel. Now, today on the show, I'm delighted to say we've got Matt Cleevely from Cleevely Electric Vehicles on the show. Hi, Matt.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for taking the time out to join us.
No problem.
Now, as electric cars become ever more popular in both the new and used car markets, many dealers and garages are going to adapt, they're going to have to adapt to selling and servicing them alongside traditional petrol and diesel cars. Now, one man who's already doing that is Matt. Now, I don't want to give too much away, but for a bit of background, his grandfather set up Cleevely Motors in the early 1960s. And Matt now runs the business. But after he and his wife, Claire, bought their first electric car, they found the whole experience a little underwhelming, so to speak. And from that moment onwards, they decided to set up a sister firm specializing in electric cars, hence the creation of Cleevely Electric Vehicles. Now, we've got plenty to talk about in the next 20 or so minutes. If you've got a question that you want to ask Matt, then please do drop it into the comments box and I'll do my best to ask it to Matt. Okay, Matt, thanks very much for being here.
No problem.
Before we get on to the topic of electric cars, can you just tell me the history of the business? Because it's been going for quite some time now, hasn't it?
Yeah, three generations now. So 1962, my grandfather, John, had a growing family and a need to earn more money. He was fixing cars on his driveway and at weekends for friends and family, and decided to take the jump from being an engineer into being a business owner. So got hold of a stagecoach house right on the edge of town in Cheltenham. Lots of built up houses around, period houses, as Cheltenham's very pretty, and started creating a workshop for him, and some brothers worked with him as well. And that was Cleevely Motors created. My father and my uncle joined him when they left school at 15, 16. So it's been very much family. My auntie joined them to be the receptionist. And when I joined about 21 years ago next month, I was a freshly qualified technician with new ideas, wanting to look after cars that we were just getting into, vehicle diagnostics and things. So just give fresh blood to the family business. And yeah, so I took the reins, from my dad, who retired about 5 years ago now, Sean, and really just wanted to keep abreast of modern vehicle technology. So when it came to replacing my wife's car, because my mechanical sympathy wasn't allowing her 1400 petrol Fiesta to do 2 miles a day doing the school run, we had solar on our house. So we still have solar on our house. So decided, let's look into electric cars. Can improve myself professionally by finding out what electric cars are all about and have a little bit of knowledge on that. And then we can run a very cheap car backwards and forwards, fueling it off of our own solar. 90% of the time, any car is sat around doing nothing anyway, whether that's at work, at home, or whatever. So it just seemed like the perfect transport for a car that never left the county. So one drive in the Nissan Leaf, and I absolutely fell in love. The problem was, went to several local dealerships in order to get this test drive, and they were very underwhelming visits where it was difficult to even get myself into a car. Repeated visits, no, sorry, battery's flat, it's locked in, do you want a micro, do you want this, do you want that, instead any petrol diesel alternative. And by then I'd really grown to love EVs and wanted to be an advocate myself, and become frustrated that if the main dealers who are supposed to be selling these cars didn't want to sell one to me who knew what specifically I wanted, then anyone walking in just to replace their car, who might just drive around town and do very low mileage, would never get offered an EV. And being a parent of 10-year-old twins, removing pollution from the school run, which is one of the most important things, and in towns and cities, which is all the second car does in most families, it was a really important thing to me. And I've become very passionate about wanting to spread EV adoption and and to educate people about the joy of EV, but also give them somewhere to find out things and firsthand and maybe buy. So started off down the road. Cleevely Motors at that point was very successful and needed to grow, but couldn't in its traditional home on the outskirts of Cheltenham. So I located a 4,000 square foot premise on an industrial estate just a mile away, so that I could grow motors, which gave me the opportunity to create EV just in the sidelines initially, and see how that developed. Was I picking the right thing? Certainly throughout my career with motors, I was told as a technician, well, in order for an independent workshop to survive, you'd need to specialize. Many have specialized in one make or mark, but I didn't want to alienate the customer base that my grandfather had built up by picking one make or model, or even just a group. So decided when EV came along, yes, I believe it to be the future and the future of motors as well. So why don't we pick a fuel type, that being hybrid and EV, and let's set down that path and see if we can keep motors going for another few generations as well.
Yeah. And here you are now.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to that when you're talking about the Nissan Leaf and you were interested in buying one. You know, you'd obviously done all your research about electric cars. You know, the what you need, the infrastructure you needed at home. You know, how your lifestyle, how that car was going to plug into your lifestyle. Pun unintended there. How the car was going to fit into your lifestyle. You've done all of that background research, and at the very last point of the chain, the last link of the chain, which is going to the dealer, actually experiencing the car, driving it, and you were let down. I mean, that must have been incredibly frustrating, and I'm sure you're not alone in that.
It was very frustrating, yeah. And now being an EV advocate, a member of various EV owners groups, and part of a thing called the EV Nexus, which is it's a group of groups that are owners groups that go out and try and publicize EV education and the benefits of owning an EV. But yeah, to go back to the point, it was hugely frustrating. And as anyone does do the research when looking into buying a new car, I found really one of the most frustrating points was that not only were they denying me access to the cars that I wanted to test drive, but they knew nothing about them, and they had them there to sell. And it's something that we've heard time and time again, is that once you've done your research, you go armed with more information than you'll ever get out of a salesman at main dealers, because they just don't seem to know anything about them, whether that's not filtering down through from the manufacturers, whether it's the dealership group not wanting to sell the cars. I don't know. But yeah, there's a lot of education that needs to happen in our trade in order for us to sell these forms of transport, because there is a huge market of people that want to buy.
Yeah. You're in the privileged position, well, not privileged, but the position at the moment where a lot of garages and dealers are going to have to follow your lead, which is have two different types of business, traditional combustion engine cars and electric cars. You obviously see two different types of customers, predominantly two different types of customers. Do you think electric car buyers are as passionate about their cars as petrol heads, or do you think they're even more passionate, or there's a different type of passion?
We do see there is definitely a noticeable difference between EV owners and drivers and the traditional customers. The EV owners tend to be split into a couple of different types. They're all very passionate about their cars, but they've bought them for a couple of different reasons. Either because we see a lot of Tesla owners, we are recommended on the owners group as the aftermarket place to go to for repairs and servicing and things. So we see a lot of Tesla, usually 2-3 a day. And the Tesla owners tend to be IT, software, gadget geeky type of people. And they love the car, and they bought it because it's the ultimate in gadgetry in four-wheel form. Then you get the other type that are eco warrior type people. They're concerned about the environmental impact of a car, but also the cost saving benefits. And they although they're very passionate about their car, it's just a car, and the least it costs them to keep it on the road, the better. So it's something that I've found very interesting in the last couple of years, is that there is no huge money to be made in EV servicing and repairs. They're very reliable cars with very few moving parts, and the traditional way of running a workshop where you can charge a labour rate but also make on the parts as well, and it can be very profitable. You have to work a lot harder or with higher volume in order to make the same kind of money out of EV repairs and maintenance.
Yeah. I mean, that also, you can make a similar parallel with OEMs, with manufacturers at the moment as well, because manufacturers are being forced into building electric cars. Of course, there are big government targets, particularly so in the UK, but in other countries around the world, where there's going to be a ban on pure petrols and diesels. Manufacturers are being forced down this route of building electric cars, and yet they know that electric cars are still unprofitable for them. They know that they can sell, 500 big diesel SUVs for every electric car that they sell. That's a very rough figure there, but it's interesting. We're in a very interesting stage at the moment, aren't we? Because people are being told to buy electric cars. They're being encouraged to. Manufacturers are building them, and yet it's still baby steps, isn't it? People are still unaware. They don't know what these funny electric cars are.
Very much so, yeah.
It's a fascinating time to be in the industry, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's we've done this for 2.5, coming up 3 years now, and we do a lot of public facing events, and it's always the same questions as well. How far does it go? How long does it take to charge, and all that kind of stuff? So very much the core of our business at the moment is about education and letting people know the facts and figures about it. It was a lot different a couple of years ago. It was a lot easier. There were only a handful of cars, if that you could that you had to talk about with customers. But now, like you say, the manufacturers are getting forced into creating a lot of different makes and models and versions of the cars. So there's a lot more variety out there. And in our sales room now, we have Kia, Honda, Renault, Nissan, Mini, Lexus. And it's growing all the time. But it's going to be a long path for a traditional main dealer or manufacturer to get their head round how you sell these cars. And it's a different way of selling. We find the customers come pre-educated. You've got to know your facts and figures. They're just really coming. They've already made their mind up. The sell is a lot easier. That said, we'd never been in the market of selling cars. It's usually just been repairing them. But I created EV to sell cars because I got frustrated at the position we find ourselves in, and the second-hand EV market is very buoyant. Car residuals are very high. So, there's a lot to learn. I didn't think we'd be as far along with EV as we currently are. I thought it was going to be a slow burn, but certainly the last year has shot up, and we're getting a lot more sales. Pre-COVID, we were selling 2 months before COVID, we were selling 2 to 3 cars a week, which is pretty good figures.
Yeah. I mean, that's good figures, full stop, let alone something that's a different kind of car, like an electric car. Let me just talk to you about, you say that obviously Cleevely Motors deals in repairing cars, and yet your first steps into actually selling cars is with Cleevely electric vehicles. And how difficult was it to actually set up the business and to say, right, we're going to sell cars? Because it's a different mindset. It's a very different skill, isn't it?
It is, yes. But when I created EV, it is its second, a completely standalone company. I brought on board a friend of mine whose background was very much marketing and graphic design and things, and with a little bit of sales thrown in as well. So someone who had some experience of that. And between us, it really has been just learning as we go and learning the hard way, what customers want, what they expect, because those are two sometimes different things than what you can think you need to provide. But also the warranty element of it and the financing element of it, the FCA and all that kind of stuff. So it's been a difficult couple of years. We've had to learn a lot very quickly, but we've got a very adaptive team, and being so small as well, we can be very agile with it and go, right, okay, that's not working, bin it, just go down another avenue. So we're constantly talking, is this the right way? Car supply has been one of the harder things because there wasn't a huge amount out there, and sourcing from auctions can be hit and miss. So we've sorted our car supply now, and we're working with a very good car supplier that supplies us retail ready cars, as well as cars that now sort of turn up. We sell cars on behalf of owners that are moving out of their first ever EV and moving up the ladder. And by the way, nobody goes back. It's all, once you're on that EV trail, you don't go back to petrol and diesels. I'm hooked. As a petrol head, I've been racing cars for 20 odd years. I've got a single seater with a Hayabusa engine in it, so something really quick and adrenaline buzzing. And my Tesla Model 3, that is my company car, is my preferred drive. The buzz is great, and the instant torque and acceleration is addictive.
Yeah. Well, funnily enough, we had Graham McDonald on the show last week, the boss of Caterham Cars, and we were talking about that precise point about, everybody's, doom and gloom about this 2035 ban on petrols and diesel cars. But it would be nice if we can get to a stage where you can still have small sports cars, with a petrol engine, delivering those thrills on a Saturday morning, and yet during the week we can all be driving around in electric cars or cars that are environmentally friendly. The two powertrains and two different power sources can live happily side by side with each other. And just because you drive an electric car during the week doesn't mean you're not a petrol head anymore. It's
no, not at all. No, yeah. I mean, generally cars are getting a bit boring and safe anyway. So I do say that I think cars are becoming more like a domestic white good. There's not the passion for your car as there was when it was your family car. So back through the generations. So having toy weekend cars may become something more of a norm. Who knows? But I don't think a Caterham would be any less a Caterham or exciting to drive if it didn't have a petrol engine in it. If it had an electric motor, I think if anything it might be a benefit, because not having the noise, you don't really pay much attention to not having the noise or the smells anymore. Quite quickly, it all becomes about the instant acceleration and the torque but under your foot. Very much so. Certainly for me, and this weekend my task is to I've already put racing brake pads in a friend's performance Model 3. This weekend we're lowering it and setting it up on our four-wheeler liner. So he does track days in his car. He bought it to enjoy and to have fun in. And I'm probably going to lower my car as well, if not this weekend, but the next weekend, and revert back to those days where I had a lowered car and just toyed around with it, because it is a pleasure to drive.
Yeah, that sounds a fun weekend. Caterham do say that they are seriously investigating having an electric Caterham 7, but of course it comes down to battery weight, because the batteries add, well, for a Caterham it could be up to 500 kilograms. It could be for the battery pack. But of course that's the thing though, isn't it? Battery technology is constantly changing. What's current at this precise moment in time will be different in 18 months time. You must be seeing that in the used market as well, because up to now, electric cars have they haven't been that plentiful, but the battery technology has definitely improved. So the cars that you're buying on the used market, is there a big demand for them? Are you having to squabble amongst other companies for this used car stock?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Pre-COVID, it was really difficult to buy a car from an auction. They were going through auctions for virtually retail money. EVs hold their money tremendously well after that initial depreciation period of a couple of years. and residuals remain very high for used EVs because the demand is there. I've been shocked from the technical side of things of how well the batteries, if used correctly, last as well. It's the same as any petrol diesel engine. If you look after it and charge it in the right way and use it in the right way, these things just keep on going. And we're seeing failures on cars that are first gen battery technology and technology within the inverters and things, but these cars are already 10 years old now, and they've still got perfectly good lives left to lead. And we're now repairing a lot of electronic circuits. So we've had an inverter out of a Citroen C0, and yes, it's been a tougher job because we've had to work things out electronically rather than mechanically, but we can still provide a repair service at a reasonable cost to be able to look after that customer, and they've still got a car that will do them another 10-15 years easily. So these aren't disposable cars, that they're lasting a lot better than anyone expected.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and that has been one of the things that people like to throw at electric cars, saying, "Oh, the batteries will degrade. You know, the batteries will be worthless in 5 years' time." And the Nissan Leaf has been with us for 10 years now, and that hasn't really proved to be correct. Yes, the batteries have degraded, but that's what happens with batteries. As long as cars are looked after and serviced properly, and they're plugged in correctly, there's nothing to suggest that they're going to break. And also, you've just said it there yourself that yes, you are having to replace key components in electric cars, but in a 10-year life cycle of a normal combustion engine car, a petrol engine car can go through constant failures and constant mechanical failures, can't it?
Oh, massively, yes. Yeah. And it was something that I was very conscious of when setting up EV, is monitoring what kind of components we were replacing, how often on various EVs, to see is it a viable business option to set down this route. If it's not from a workshop point of view, it will come down to volume in the end, where we're booking cars and hourly service slots or 2 hourly service slots and having everything in-house. It just becomes a different model to run our business because they are so reliable. And petrol diesel cars, you can make a lot of money out of engines and gearboxes and clutches and cam belts and regular things that need repetitive maintenance. Total cost of ownership of an EV is so low. It's fantastic. And my wife's Nissan Leaf that we did buy over 3 years ago now, eventually when we got one, we've literally done nothing other than put a pollen filter in it and maybe some wiper blades in 3 years.
Unheard of, isn't it?
It's it's rubbish from a garage side of things, but for the customer running that car, and when we do sell them, we follow up and just check for feedback. And so many people, and time again, just said, "I can't believe I didn't jump to this sooner. My friends all love it. It's such a great car. It's a better driving experience, and it costs nothing to run." Yeah.
Now you obviously get all of the electric cars, the big electric cars into your premises. Which manufacturers would you say are really getting it right? As we know, Tesla are, the leaders in this particular sector, but do you think that gap is actually decreasing?
Yes, it probably is. I mean, certainly when I bought my Model 3 last year, it was very much a close call between the Model 3 or the Kia e-Niro, because that Kia and Hyundai have got it absolutely bang on. They create such an efficient car that's a pleasure to drive. In the end, it was only personal preferences for me that switched it. It was over-the-air updates on the Model 3, the sparse interior, so lack of buttons, and just the charging network was why I chose my Model 3. Otherwise, the cars drive very similarly, and the e-Niro is actually a more practical car. It's got a better boot on it and more space. Tesla, I was really impressed with. So seeing some of the earliest Model S's come through that were from 2014, there were problems on them that were down to manufacturing, not just a lack of experience. You could see it in the way they built. But seeing a car, we bought our Tesla Model S that we rent out, We bought that in 2018, and just purely on the strength of the fact that from 2014 you had a 2016 Model S in, and those problems on the 2014 car, Tesla had ironed them out and completely changed the design, and they were really moving fast. Traditional manufacturers, that might take 5 years or a model change to actually alter and change that and improve it. But Tesla were moving very quickly. So legacy manufacturers are a long way behind, but the Korean manufacturers are catching up fast. I think Elon knows that, but the Model 3 is a vastly superior car to the Model S. In my opinion, it drives incredibly, and so far proving to be very reliable.
And I mean, that's really interesting what you say, because it's true, really, isn't it, that Tesla is, they don't call themselves a car company, because they're not.
No.
They are a tech company that just happens to build cars. And not only have they made huge developments in terms of battery technology, but the steps that they've improved in building cars has just been incredible. Whereas, like you say, the legacy manufacturers, they are creating the next electric cars. Can be a 5, 6, it can even be an 8-year cycle for them to produce a new car. Tesla doesn't have that kind of mentality. It's able to get cars into the marketplace an awful lot quicker. It's really, the next 5 years or so are going to be fascinating for developing the electric car, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think I'm no Tesla fanboy. Yes, I've got one. We see a lot through the workshop, but I just admire his guts and the way that company attacks it. Like you say, they are their technology first, and they've just approached it from this end, and car manufacturers are going at it from that end. Yeah. They just need to think differently about how to make a car. What tech do we need? Right, here's a battery, here's the motors, let's build something around it. That's the way that Tesla have done it. And I think it, like VAG have got the MEB platform, I think that's the way that manufacturers need to go, is like, here's this platform, it's this long, this wide, what shell can we put on it? Or even can we have a load of different shell body types, and the customer chooses what goes on?
Yeah.
And just completely flip car manufacturing on its head, so that everything's the same. It'd be cheaper for manufacturers to do. Everything is the same component. You just choose the shell differently to suit your personal preference.
Yeah.
If cars don't go that way, eventually, I'd be very surprised, because we're heading that way.
Yeah. Well, perhaps we may even return to the good old days of coach building. You just buy the platform and then you take it to another manufacturer and choose your body. You never know.
Yeah. I'm just checking down. I may need to apologise for the lack of background noise if you are hearing a Kangol hammer going at it, because we're expanding Cleevely Motors as well and adding a second MOT bay. So there's quite. Right. I don't sit still. I like to keep pushing on with things. And if I see a path of development that will lead to both these businesses benefiting from everything that's going on and being able to survive for longer, then I go for it.
Brilliant. Could you ever see you combining the two businesses, so you just become one business? Do you think that's where it's all going?
Yeah, I do. Yes, I very, very much do. It's not that I don't want to pass it down through the family, but I just think it becomes a very different business than it traditionally started with. So consolidating the two eventually was something very much forefront of my mind. Yeah. Without my staff here, I wouldn't have a business at all. And so creating something that we can all share and just have as a group business, so that everyone's got a vested interest in it, is something that's quite key to me. Yes, it's my name above the door, but I couldn't do it all myself. So in order for longevity of both businesses and simplicity, so as COVID has forced on me the fact that we've moved out of the traditional Andover Street site that we were at for the last 58 years, and we're all now working from the same business. So if anything, sort of it's speeding things up. That's why I'm extending and adding more ramps to this premise. So we've got a good base now. The customers seem to like coming here, and eventually just merging the two seems sensible.
Brilliant. Well, final question, Matt. If you could go back to when you first started selling cars, which wasn't that long ago, but if you could, no. And you could give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Wow. I'm not saying we've done things perfectly, but there's not a great deal that I would change, because I think we were very careful to analyze the way we did things and try and do it in the best way from the offset. There wasn't the choice of cars, so we didn't go out and try and get every car in. We got in what we thought would sell, and in very low volumes. We were talking 2 or 3 in a back corner of the original workshop here in Lansdowne. So and we just did very low volumes. So I think maybe if I'd been able to get a second premise straight away and go, yes, this car selling thing is going to work, have more confidence in yourself, it might have been just go with that straight away and see where you end up. But the premises that the showroom is in was filled. It only became vacant in September last year. So it's very much felt like fate has been on our side. We were in the premise, we're in 41A with a small showroom area. And as our volume of sales grew, the sales room become available. So we were just very lucky in that way. And I think listening to your gut as a businessman is a very key thing to do. And that's what I've done, is I've listened to my gut and I've gone with it. So anyone out there that is watching, just believe in yourself and your dream and idea and focus on it and throw yourself at it, and hard work pays off.
Brilliant. Fantastic words to end on. We're going to have to leave it there, Matt, but thank you
No
so
problem.
much for joining us. It was absolutely fascinating. Thank you.
Anytime. Thanks, James. Thank you.
Well, if you want to get involved in a car dealer live just like this one, then please do email me, james.batchelor@blackballmedia.co.uk, or James Baggett, and he's available at james@blackballmedia.co.uk. On Friday, we're going to be speaking to Sandy Burgess. He's the chairman of the Scottish Motor Trade Association. And until then, thank you very much for watching, and bye-bye.